Good evening and welcome to Noble Reporting. This is your host Dale Noble reporting. In the headlines this week, Erdogan has called for a rerun of the mayoral election in Istanbul, much to the shock of no one. Sylvie Listhaug, the Norwegian Minister of Public Health and the Elderly, caused outrage in political and media circles by allowing the public to think that they have agency. Asia Bibi attained asylum in Canada and received a warm welcome from Imam Trudeau. A group of economically stricken southern African nations upset middle-class white activists after calling for leniency regarding the ivory trade. The ANC won the South African elections despite their continued culling of the opposition. And, because it's mandatory, Harry and Meghan welcomed their first baby. Woo. But first, President Erdogan has called for a rerun of the Istanbul mayoral elections that took place on March 31st. The Turkish leader has cited corruption for this controversial decision, though it is suspected that the action is representative of an increasingly autocratic rule in Turkey. This revelation surprised many Western allies of the nation, particularly the EU-27. The European Commission are reported to have claimed that they didn't believe he would actually do it, whilst the European Parliament's Brexit representative, Guy Verhofstadt, is rumoured to have said that he was proud of Erdogan for following the EU tradition of overturning democratic results. Here in the UK, supporters of the second referendum reacted with jubilation. Let's hear what one excited Remain supporter had to say.
Look at how progressive Erdogan is being. How is it that a nation state actively blocked from joining the European Union understands democracy better than our own country? I say good on him. I hope he continues such policies like this in the future. We could learn much from him.
Despite criticism from some quarters of the Western allies, Erdogan has stated that he will not back down on the issue. The rerun has been set for the 23rd of June. In Norway, the newly selected Minister for Public Health and the Elderly, Sylvie Listhaug, has found herself in hot water after declaring that people should be allowed to smoke, drink, and eat as much red meat as they wish. The statement surprised many who look to the Scandinavian countries as some of the happiest and healthiest in the world, as it runs counter to the prevailing narrative of strict diet and lifestyle choices. Health groups and politicians took aim at Listhaug, citing that her comments are detrimental to the well-being of the public, for they cannot be trusted to look after themselves, and that she wants to make her job much easier by removing the elderly from her responsibilities. The minister, who is herself an occasional smoker, has since defended her comments whilst enjoying a steak, medium rare, with a glass of Cabernet Sauvignon. Asia Bibi, the Christian woman from Pakistan who spent 8 years on death row for blasphemy, has finally left the country after months spent in hiding. She originally sought asylum in the United Kingdom, but was rebuffed after it was decided that her presence would cause tension with the tolerant Muslim community in the country. After being severely let down by the British government, she then looked for asylum in other countries. Canada had long been suspected to be the place most likely to offer her safe harbour. This was confirmed earlier this week, though officials have been diligent in keeping her identity hidden. There have been unconfirmed reports of a teary-eyed Asia responding to the liberal actions of Prime Minister Trudeau in recent months, with her wondering if the death penalty had not been all that bad an option. Botswana, Namibia, Zambia, and Zimbabwe held a meeting this week to discuss the potential leniency on ivory trading laws. Elephant poaching continues to be a large problem in Africa, as demand for ivory continues to remain a lucrative business, leading these nations to unify in an attempt to get in on the action. President Mogwitsi Masisi of Botswana began proceedings by gifting the leaders of the other three nations with stools made from elephant feet. Questions were raised as to how these were attained, though these were quickly shot down. Neighbouring nations Angola and South Africa are also on record as having previously voiced support for this issue. It is claimed that the money raised from the trade in ivory and elephant hunting could be reinvested into conservation programs to aid in bolstering elephant numbers. Wildlife campaigners are outraged that the nations are considering such action, as it runs counter to their sensibilities towards the way in which conservation should proceed. A government representative responded to the criticism.
It is for activists to condemn that which they do not understand. They do not live with the devastation that elephant overpopulation has wrought in local communities. It is typical of white nations to dictate to us from afar. This simply shows that their belief of superiority and imperialism never truly went away.
In South Africa, the African National Congress, also known as the ANC, won the national elections, but with the smallest majority it has held since 1994. The reasons for the losses are uncertain, though some point to the corruption rife within Cyril Ramaphosa's government. There are also unverified reports that it may be due to their aggressive behaviour towards their own people, if the death toll at Plasmoord is anything to go by. The theories circulating around this issue were supported by the land reform policy that would see land taken from farmers and redistributed to those with little experience in farming. What is certain, though, is that there is growing discontent within the nation. As the economy struggles to grow, unemployment remains high, services fail, and high crime levels continue, somewhat reminiscent to the current state of the European Union. And finally, if you didn't know already, Harry and Meghan had their baby this week. Despite declarations that Meghan would not go to hospital for the birth, with her instead opting to remain at home, this was inevitably reversed as reality kicked in, and the 37-year-old noted that labour was no easy matter. Truth be told, there is really very little newsworthy to the story, other than the baby is doing well, and named Archie. So yeah, now that you know, let's move on to the far more interesting story of whether Danny Baker is a racist. The 61-year-old comedian was sacked from the BBC after posting a tweet that was seen as slightly off colour for this day and age. The offending image of a chimpanzee in between two well-dressed individuals was given the title Royal Baby Leaves Hospital. The post has since been deleted, and Mr. Baker has since been engaged in a tour of apology. It has been suggested that he was making commentary towards the way in which the baby was being paraded in front of the media. Giving no thought whatsoever about the biracial genetics of the child in question, Mr. Baker showcased a level of willful ignorance unheard of in the age of social media. So tone-deaf was this tweet that the online police are now investigating the story as a potential hate crime. That is all for this week. Thank you for tuning in to Noble Reporting. See you next Sunday.